Hello everyone! So today I want to talk to you about the verbs hear and listen, and we can discuss what's the difference between these verbs because they can be a little confusing. Lots of languages don't have this difference, so today I'm going to give you lots of examples so you know when to use these in English. Thank you very much for joining me today. Before we get started, remember to click that subscribe button and also the bell so you get notifications about all my videos and can keep improving your English. So let's get started. The major difference between hear and listen, what is it? Hear is something passive. It's the sense. We have the sense of hearing, the sense of smell, the sense of taste. So when we hear something, it's not an action, it's simply sounds going into our ears. When we listen to something, we pay attention to it. We focus on that thing, we put effort in. We're trying to hear it, we're trying to listen. We are making an effort. It is an action. Listening is an action and hearing is something passive. It happens even when you don't mean it to. You can't turn off your ears, so when you're doing other things, you hear things around you. But when you want to focus and pay attention on something, then you listen to it. Okay, so let's have some examples. Well, for example, I live in this house, this is my home, and there's a lot of nature outside, and so quite often I can hear the birds singing. So this is not something that I stop and actively listen to, it's just I'm doing things and I notice them, so I can hear them. I have the ability to hear them. There is birdsong outside, but I'm not stopping to listen. Now I'm listening to the birdsong. I'm paying attention to it and really listening. Or we could say a city is a noisy place. You can always hear lots of noises, like dogs barking, babies crying, cars going down the street, etc. So there are lots of things you can hear in the city. So you don't necessarily stop and listen to the baby crying or listen to the dog barking, but you're doing other things and you can just hear it. There are lots of sounds in the city that you can hear. Or in a scary film, you might hear a character say, "Did you hear something moving outside? Shh, listen." So at first they say, "Did you hear something or someone moving outside?" Because they're talking about something they weren't paying attention to, and suddenly they heard something. And after that, shh, listen, because at that point they're paying attention to those sounds, and that's when they're listening.
I hear something.
Now, when you go to school to study English, or when you do an English exam, you'll do listening, a listening exam. And that is when you're practicing your ability, when you're paying attention to something, and how much you understand from that. If you maybe listen to a recording of a conversation, how much did you understand of that conversation when you're listening and paying attention? However, hearing exams are also things that exist, but hearing exams are different. They test your ability to be able to hear. So, for example, in the UK, when you're quite young, when you're in your kind of first school, in infant or primary school, you normally do some hearing tests or hearing exams, and they will play sounds, and the sounds will become more quiet and quieter and quieter and quieter, and you have to see if you can hear them. So at that point you're talking about your ability to be able to hear, to see if you have a problem with your hearing or not. So when we're talking about listening, we're talking about paying attention, and hearing, we're usually talking about a kind of ability. When you're on the phone with someone, you might say, "The signal's really bad, I can't hear you." "I'm sorry, what did you say? I can't hear you." So here we're talking about, again, about our ability to be able to hear. I can't hear you. I'm trying, but I can't hear you. Or if you go to a lecture or a speech or presentation and you're sitting really far at the back, maybe you can't hear. You don't have the ability to hear because it's so far away. Or when you're at that presentation, you might listen very carefully and take some notes. So you're trying really hard to actively listen and take notes. Someone might ask you the question, do you ever listen to the radio? So we use listen in this context because we're talking about trying to hear something, actively hearing something. If you're talking to someone and that person is doing other things and it doesn't seem like they're paying attention to you, you might say, listen to me when I'm talking to you. Listen to me when I'm talking to you. And here, in this case, we're asking that person to pay attention to us, not do other things, and to really listen to us.
Listen to me.
Side note, there are some unusual situations in which we use these words. For example, someone might say to you, if you're talking about something really serious and really personal, I know you're listening, but do you hear me? And that means, I know you're trying to listen, I know you're paying me attention, but do you really understand what I'm saying? Do you really understand what I mean? And do you really care about it as well? I know you're listening, but do you hear me? Or, you listen, but you never really hear me. That would be another way we could say that. So here, we're using the word hear to mean, do you really understand my kind of deep emotion? But this is a slightly different situation, so this doesn't really follow the main rules.
You really don't hear me, do you?
Now there are some situations where listen and hear can be interchangeable, and we can use both. For example, did you hear that speech the Prime Minister gave the other week? Or, did you listen to the speech the Prime Minister gave the other week? So here, both sentences are absolutely fine. The focus just shifts a little bit. If we use hear, the verb is quite neutral, and the focus is on the Prime Minister's speech, and the event of the Prime Minister's speech. If we use the word listen, because that's such an active verb, we're really focusing on the verb in that sentence. So both the sentences have the same meaning, but the focus in the sentence just shifts a little. First it's focused on the event, and then it's focused on the verb, listen. The same thing happens with the sentence, I love hearing birdsong in the morning, or I love listening to the birdsong in the morning. The meaning's very similar, but if we're hearing it, it's just focused on the event, the birdsong. If we're listening, it's focused on the action. I love really paying attention to that sound. Now, remember, when you have the verb listen, we always put to after it if we've got an object. Like, listen to me, or did you listen to that song, or did you listen to the speech, or he is listening to his friend. So we're always going to put to after it when we've got an object. However, if there's no object, we don't need to. For example, listen, she's speaking. Or I could say, listen to her, she's speaking. Or, the music was wonderful, we sat and listened. The music was wonderful, we sat and listened to it. So when we've got our object after, we'll make sure to put to after the verb, listen. Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much everyone for joining me today. That was a very short video. Let me know what you think of it, and don't forget to subscribe. Lovely to see you. Have a wonderful day. See you soon. Bye.